If you've been intrigued by what you've been seeing on this channel and are considering moving to Saipan, if you'd like a sunnier, simpler, slower lifestyle while still being part of the US, then start with the Saipan Living Relocation Guide, an A to Z reference of everything you'll need to adjust to life here on Saipan, Tinian, or Rota. Order here on YouTube, on Amazon, or at saipanliving.com. Then consider a phone or Zoom consultation where you can ask any question at all to plan your move to Saipan. Then when you're ready to take the leap, you can sign up for a reconnaissance tour before you move, or a relocation tour. Visit different neighborhoods, see what life is like, get your paperwork in order, your appeal box, your ID, so you can hit the ground running. As a bonus, if you sign up for any tour or consultation, you'll get a copy of the Fast Track Kit that has all the forms and documents and applications you need to start your residency. My name is Walt Goodridge. Let's make your move to Saipan simple, fast, and stress-free. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, folks, seems like my testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, seems like my mic is working now. Okay. An interesting turn of events that I'll share with you. At about 7:10 this morning, the lights went out, the electricity went out, and I still planned to do the live stream because I still had battery power on my laptop. But then as we got close to the time, I realized that my camera runs on electricity and I wouldn't be able to do the live stream using my regular camera. So I set about trying to use my phone to compensate, but that didn't quite work out. But on the fortunate side, what did happen is that at exactly 9:03 a.m., the lights went on. So I'm now back online, and hopefully, barring another incident, we should be able to move forward. All right, let me just make sure. Okay. All right, so just let me know in the chat if your volume is coming through okay. It looks to be good on my end. And one of these days we'll get to a point where this is seamless. But part of that has to do with life here on Saipan being a little bit unpredictable. And like I said, we had a power outage for about 2 hours just now. Okay, so with that said, again, my name is Walt Goodridge, the Jamaican on Saipan, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have about life here, about the culture, about the tinian paving of the runway. And I just did a video on that yesterday, so you can check that out for an update on what's happening with the on Tinian, with the destruction of runway Able. All right, so with that said, let's get to some of the questions. All right, we've got a few here piling up. Okay. Inspirelight asked, due to an exodus of residents, are some neighborhoods in the CK area in particular largely vacant? And here's the important part. Consequently, are they more prone to criminal activity? If so, which kinds of crime? Couple of things I'll mention here. One, in general, Saipan's crime rate is fairly low. I remember when I first moved to the island years ago, I was checking out the local television station, and I remember the top news on the 6 o'clock evening news was that a tourist's laptop had been stolen. So while it was unfortunate for the tourist, I'm sure the fact that that was the headline news on this little island made me smile. So in general, the crime rate is fairly low. Home break-ins may be something if you people see you as a target or if you make yourself a target. Um, but in general, the crime rate is low. Sometimes tourists get a little targeted because they'll act in irresponsible ways and leave their expensive equipment in the back seat of their convertible. But in general, crime is low. And I don't think, especially in the CK area, that stands for Chalankanawa, it's still fairly populated. So even with an exodus of people, I haven't heard any reports of the crime rate being negatively affected. But if there were to be, then it would probably be home break-ins when you're not at home, as people on a small island will might probably get familiar with your routine. But in general, it is a safe place to live. All right. Let's see. I'm a dog lover, although I don't currently have one and may or may not ever. But are the apartment complexes that accept dogs not only noisier due to barking, but also more, let's see, generally out of control, fights, unattended children, things, or etc.? All right. Interesting question, Inspire One Light. Um, Saipan, for the most part, and every place I've lived, people tend to be well behaved. I tend to stay away from large apartment complexes. The one that I lived in before was only one, two, three, four, I think 8 units. The one I'm living in now, also similar, small number of units. So generally, you reduce the chances of the riffraff, and I count myself among the riffraff, um, living among that. But in general, people tend to be very well behaved. Keep in mind, we have a majority population here that is from that are overseas contract workers. You have Bangladeshis, you have Filipinos, you have, and yes, even though it's Chinese and Korean and Japanese. So for the most part, I find that people tend to be well behaved because they know that they are guests on the island. So if there is going to be any bad behavior, it would be from the Americans, people um, who don't consider themselves guests. But people tend to be well behaved. Every now and then, yes, you might run into some fights and things, but I don't think if you choose your apartment complex carefully, I don't think you'll run into that issue. All right, if you tend to live out in the country in a home that's in a remote area, then perhaps, but I don't think so. Okay. Let's see. Otafari 2907 says, how do I contact you to set up a 2-day tour? I'm not currently a member of your channel. You do not have to be a member of my channel in order to access the saipanliving.com website, or in order to access the most of the videos on the channel or the Discover Saipan website. If you'd like to arrange a 2-day tour, you can check out discoversaipan.com. I'm about to launch a new version of that in next day or so, but there'll be a form that you can use to contact me to arrange a tour. Otherwise, you can simply email walt@discoversaipan.com, and then I'll send you information on the itineraries, the tour options, and prices, and then you can arrange it that way. All right. Um, let's see. Thanks, Rhythms and Retrogrades. Is it, oh, this is a good question from Mayakashmun 3000. Is it hard to move to Saipan if you are a green card holder? No, As of December of 2009, if I'm not mistaken, November or December, immigration of Saipan was taken over by the federal authorities. And Saipan then became part of the US for immigration purposes. So the CNMI, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, is considered part of the United States for immigration purposes, which means if you are here on site, if you are a green card holder, this land qualifies as being part of the US. So you are not in violation of your green card status. You are not out of the US. You are still legitimately inside the US. I know this for a fact because I am a green card holder here on Saipan, even though, or in the US, even though I've been in the US for many, many, many years, I still retain my Jamaican citizenship, and I'm a green card holder. So, uh, and for those of you who may not be aware, part of the stipulation and the requirements for green card holders, permanent residents, is that they must appear to permanently reside in the US or their green card status could be called into question. So, if I were to leave Saipan, go to China for 6 months, 12 months, I would need to request in advance a reentry permit so that when I land back in the United States, an immigration official would not have grounds to say, well, it looks like you've not been permanently residing in the United States for the last year, so we're going to revoke your green card. They do have that authority to do that. So to answer your question, green card holders are okay to stay on Saipan or Tinian or Rote or any of the Northern Islands, and you will still be considered as being in the United States. So, very good question. Thank you for that. And so it's not hard to move at all. It's the same as if you were moving to Jersey or Florida or California. You simply show up and start living your life. Once you land on Saipan, you will go, or on your way here, you'll go through immigration on Guam, and at that point, you'll show your green card and whatever passport you have, and your green card will allow you entry into Guam and through to Saipan. So not a problem at all. The only issue, of course, is just the cost of the tickets. But for those of you who are new to the channel, Philippine Airlines is starting flights March 26th or 29th, I believe, and direct flights from Manila to Saipan. So if you are able to find a cheap flight from the US or from some hubs directly to Manila, you'll be able to get ostensibly a cheaper flight to Saipan starting March 26th. So check that out. It may be of value to you. How many levels of membership does your channel have? Three levels. And I set this up as many YouTubers do months ago, and I've forgotten all the levels. But there's a general basic membership that you can support the channel. That's 99 cents or $2.99 a month. Then there's a relocation insider level, and then there's a Pacific Pioneer level. So three different levels, and some of the videos that I do create are inside tips and secrets for people interested in relocating. So those I don't make publicly available. So those would be for people who are uh, on the relocation insider level. Um, if you, and there's other perks that come along with that as well. And if you'd like more information on that, you can check out saipanliving.com. But as far as channel memberships, yes, please do feel free to support the channel, and either through a super chat or through membership. We're at a critical point now where every little bit helps to push us over the edge. All right. Samuel asked, do any of the apartments there have maximum income limits? Concerned about finding something affordable and convenient, but I saw a number with income restrictions. There are some apartments that that do have maximums. So they are geared towards regular folks who don't have exorbitant incomes, and if you exceed that income, then you wouldn't be, be considered eligible for those apartments. I can think of some now near the college and as well. However, there are also high end apartments that you might want to check out as well. Gated communities, higher end apartments. We do have a full range of apartments, anything from $200 a month, $100 a month to share a room in a home to 1,200, 1,400, 1,500 a month in some of the gated communities. So I think you should be okay finding an apartment. And as Inspire One Light just mentioned, people are leaving the island. Some people are leaving the island. In fact, that's a news announcement I just got wind of this morning was that one of our stores here is closing. National Office Supply is scheduled to close. The news report I saw didn't give an exact date, but the reason for it wasn't the economy per se. The reason for it was something having to do with the status of their employees. Many of the employees here on Saipan are contract workers, CW1 visa holders. And one of the requirements of a CW1 visa holder, and by the way, that's comparable and akin to a work permit. So if so, a person is only um, valid to be on the island if they have an employer through which they have this CW1 visa, this work permit. If they lose that job, if they lose that employment, then they have a certain period of time, maybe 90 days, in order to find another employer to essentially sponsor their presence here on the island, or else they have to leave. So that's one aspect of the CW visa. However, another aspect of it is something called the touchback. So if you're a CW1 visa holder, you have to, in order to renew, you have to actually leave the CNMI, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, and then reapply for entry. I'm not sure of the exact process, but essentially you have to touch back at home before you can be allowed to come back. And unfortunately, that's not a guaranteed process. So some people will touch back to the Philippines, to China, to Bangladesh, wherever, and not be able to return. So that's causing, and the delay between when you leave and when you're approved depends on scheduling, that sort of, with the various offices in your home country. So that's putting a bit of a strain on some of the employers here who have mostly a foreign workforce, a CW1 visa workforce, and they're losing those workers to the touchback requirement. And then as a result, they are not able to fill those positions for an extended period of time. And then there's may necessitate them closing down. So that's happening right now in certain areas as well. So just something to be aware of. So what banks and or credit unions are available on Saipan? Okay, let's see. Thank you for that support. Let's make sure I get that right here. May I Akashmore, Maya Cashmore 3000. Correct me if I said that incorrectly. Maya Cashmore 3000. Thanks for becoming an island supporter. Your support is greatly appreciated. Let's see. What banks, and then Otafari asks 2907, what banks under credit unions are available on Saipan? But before I answer that question, let's give you guys an incentive. Since Maya Cashmore 3000 became an island supporter, Maya, you can ask any question you like, and you will get a little extra attention with that question. All right, so go ahead, ask a question while I answer this for Otafari. Okay. So, what banks under credit unions are available on Saipan? I don't know about credit unions. I'm sure there must be, but the banks we have are Bank of Guam, Bank of Saipan, First Hawaiian, Bank of Hawaii, and there's one other name I always forget. Um, but so we do have banks here on Saipan. The advantage to having an account here at a bank on Saipan is that if you use the ATM, you won't be charged because you'll be using a local ATM for a local bank, and generally you won't be charged a fee. If you have an ATM card from an outside bank, an off-island bank, then unfortunately you may be charged as much as $4.25 each time you use the ATM. Um, so that's an advantage. However, if you're not in the habit of getting cash out of a machine, then you can keep using your mainland-based bank account. I have accounts with banks that are based in on the U.S. mainland and online, and that's what I use for my purchases and for online purchases as well as purchases here in stores. So we do have banks here that you can avail in order to continue, but you can keep your mainland banks. Absolutely, there's no need to give those up. So if you have a system set up where you have deposits or withdrawals from a US based bank, you can absolutely keep them here. And if you have an ATM from those banks, as I do, you can use them in the stores here. So again, this is not a foreign country in that regard. It's still part of the US, and American Express and Visa, MasterCard, and Discover, and I presume Diners Club as well, are all, you can use those here on Saipan. So banking question, hope that helps. Okay. And Inspirelight asks a couple of perhaps esoteric questions. Is any of the imported tofu organic? Is any of the imported tofu organic? Probably, um, probably not. I think most of them in packages have to have some sort of preservatives in them, if I understand the process correctly. Um, but we do have locally made tofu here, and that's fresh. And the was it calcium chloride or whatever they use as a coagulant or as a I don't think they use preservatives on the ones made here, but they do use the uh, chloride. I think it's calcium chloride as a coagulant to make the tofu firm, and that does have. If you're a health fanatic like I am, the that calcium chloride does have some properties that those of us who are attempting to live a pristine life may find a little objectionable. So I do use the locally made tofu, but I do my best to limit the quantities that I use. But to answer your question, there might be some that are imported from either Japan or from the US mainland that might be organic. I can't recall if the packaging says organic on it. Um, but since you brought up the topic of organic food, I will mention this. The fruits and vegetables we get here from the US mainland, you can get US navel oranges, you can get apples and pears and plums and peaches, and all of the fruits and vegetables and produce we get from the US. I don't think any of those are organic. If they are, it's a very small amount. In years past, those of us who are in search of organic produce requested from local stores here to carry organic produce, but unfortunately, the demand from the general population was not great enough to sustain that. So you would see organic carrots and apples, and they would be rotting and spoiling because no one with an option with a choice of buying the regular factory farmed produce compared to the price of buying the organic. Most people who are price conscious, who are sensible, won't spend the extra premium for the organic. Those of us who would are few and far between. So unless there is a great influx of health fanatics who are willing to pay extra for organic food, then it's unlikely that you're going to find organic U.S. Produce. However, what I can tell you is that the local fruits, for the most part, while not officially certified organic, are the farmers and when you get them growing just out in the wild are not treated with pesticides. So the majority of the fruits that you'll get here on Saipan, sapodillas and sweetsop and soursop and mangoes and every for the most part, those are just growing and growing naturally, so they are not treated with pesticides. The only time you might have to worry is for the green leafy vegetables, and there are ways you can tell if they have pesticides on them. But for the most part, the fruits are clean and the vegetables, while not 100% pesticide free, uh, there are farmers who do grow with minimal amounts and some who do. I know from personal experience interacting with farmers who will go out of their way not to use pesticides and use, let's say, dishwashing liquid mixed with cayenne pepper in order to stave off um, pests from their crops. So, next question. Is organic broccoli available? Nope, I answered that. Is there an orthopedic surgeon or rheumatologist on island? I do not know if there's any in private practice. What you can do is ask at CHCC, the Commonwealth Healthcare Corporation, and ask if there are specialists on staff. So that's something I'm not 100% familiar with, but I'll make a note of that. All right, I'm a U.S. veteran. Is VA healthcare available? I'm pretty sure it is. I have friends who are veterans, and we've talked on occasion about their VA benefits covering their stays in the hospital. So yes, the VA benefits, I'm 99% sure are available to you, even if you live here. Again, I know people who are relying on those VA coverage for their hospital stays. So, yep, I'm fairly certain about that one. Maya Cashmore's 3000 says, I'm sure all the food there is organic. Pretty much. Like I said, the fruits and vegetables growing are just growing wild. Again, if you want to be technical, no one is certifying them as organic, but they are just naturally growing, and people harvest them and resell them. So, but again, if you are buying some of the greens here on island, sometimes you'll see leaves that are exceptionally glossy and shiny and almost rubbery, and with no sorts of holes in them. And that's one of the ways you can tell that they're probably treated in some way, that in some non-natural way that is keeping the pests away. All right. Um, is there a Social Security administrative office there? I know that the Social Security benefits do apply. Well, okay, no, let me back up there. I'm thinking about Medicare and Medicaid. Forgive me. Is there a Social Security admin office? I'm not sure if there's an admin office here. That I do not know. There probably is one on Guam, so I'm not sure if we have our own or if we might be, or there we might be a satellite of the Guam setup. Good question. Ask me that again, and I'll get an answer for you. If, in fact, if there's an actual office. So that brings me to, I was going to suggest that you um, check ChatGPT, but I've had some experiences recently that I wanted to talk about in terms of what ChatGPT gets wrong. So this might be a good time to talk about it. And um, Maya Kushmore, make sure you ask your special question for being an island supporter, and we'll show the others exactly how far out of my way I go to take care of our members. All right, so let's see. Um, as I've been updating the Saipan Living Relocation Guide, I have been using ChatGPT to do checks on computations and to run certain numbers by in order to make sure that the 2026 edition of the Saipan Living Relocation Guide is as perfect as it can be. And on several occasions, on 4 different occasions, ChatGPT made errors that, in my opinion, were glaring errors and that called into question certain aspects of ChatGPT's reliability. Now, the first ones I'll share have simply to do with mathematical computation, but one of them was actually a comprehension issue. So let's see if I have it here. So one of the errors, the first one was I gave the I gave ChatGPT a a figure and it was required to compute what the tax would be for that amount. So let's say someone is making $60,000 a year, and part of completing the forms required that you determine how much tax is due on $60,000. And the table says between 0 and 5,000, the tax is 2%. Between 5,000 and 10,000, the tax is 5%. And ChatGPT did something unusual and broke up the income into tiers and taxed the first 1,000 at one rate, the second 2,000 at another rate, the third range at another rate, rather than simply taxing the full 60,000 at the rate on the table. So I brought it up to ChatGPT and I said, why did you break up the income into tiers rather than simply multiplying? And of course, ChatGPT admitted that it was wrong, and I have all of the text here. One of them says, let's see, you are correct. The CNMI wage and salary tax is not a progressive the way the US income tax is. It is a flat rate bracket tax, which I don't think is a good explanation because the table that I provided and all the tax rate tables I've seen are clearly based on taking the full amount, finding where it fits in a particular range and multiplying by the appropriate tax in that range. So I think ChatGPT was evading accountability here. But in other cases, it does admit its error. So in one instance, I'll jump to this one. We're going through a tax. On one line of the tax, it says, for line 20, on schedule 3, subtract line 10 from line 15. I know this may be getting a little too granular for the non-nerds in the audience, but I'll get to a final point in a second. And ChatGPT used line 10 and 15 from the current form. Okay, so I'll set this up for you. We're on Form A, and Form A says use line 10 and line 15, subtract line 10 from line 15 on schedule 3. So that's a separate form. ChatGPT subtracted line 10 from line 15 on the same form that we were working in. So that to me was simply a reading comprehension issue. So it clearly stated that you should go to a different form to subtract the numbers than ChatGPT. So I pointed it out, and ChatGPT replied, "You're absolutely right, and your reading of the instructions is precise. Thank you for laying out Schedule 3 so clearly." So yeah, so in several occasions, I've noticed errors that ChatGPT committed. And of course, as a disclaimer, if anyone uses AI, there's always a disclaimer that says, it will make mistakes. But what's fascinating about that to me is if I didn't have a certain facility with mathematics, I may not have noticed that error. If I were someone who hates math and relied completely on ChatGPT, then I would have submitted my taxes incorrectly and suffered the consequences of that. Of course, that's not that's that's through no fault of ChatGPT. You're an adult; you have to take responsibility and accountability for your failures. But it just occurred to me how we have a generation of folks who are getting very dependent on ChatGPT and other similar AI platforms, and without having first developed the capacity for critical analysis and for basic skills that would uh, make them that would enable them to see the errors when they occur. It reminds me sometimes of when I'm at a supermarket back in the States, and someone I go up with a certain number of items, and the cashier punches them in and then says, "Your total is $300 and 25 cents." And of course, the items in front, there's no way that they could have amounted to $300, but the cashier is relying completely on the machine to do the computations and doesn't have the presence of mind and the situational awareness to know that if this man just handed me a box of chocolates and a soda can, that there's no way that this could be $300. So what I see is that there is a risk here that people who get too reliant on ChatGPT may end up causing themselves great harm if they're not able to check and see the errors. Okay, so that brings me to another issue that I'll get to in a second. Um, okay, we have a question of sewage here. I'll get to that in a second. Okay. Maya Cashmore. Okay. My husband wants to know if there are coconut crabs on the island and are there protected species. Okay. Rhythms in Retrograde asked a question, and Inspire One Light asked a question. But guess what, folks? Maya Cashmore asked her own question, I'm going to assume. And therefore, since Maya just became a supporter of the channel, uh, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming you're female. Uh, your question is going to get answered first. All right. So Maya asks, what makes Saipan a place to move to, in your opinion? What is the number one reason? Okay. I've answered this question many times in many videos, and I don't mind answering it again. When I first came to the United States as a child from Jamaica, I never really felt like I fit in. And everything from the school to the neighborhood to the way the people viewed the world to the personal interaction, and then especially the weather, it was much too cold for my liking. So um, I as much benefit as I might have accrued over the years from being in the United States, the education and the uh, technical experience and the friendships, it's not a place where I felt 100% at home. All right. So I was always looking for a way to escape, and freedom and escape for me tend to define all of my decisions. If I ever have a choice, I make the decision that grants me the most freedom. Um, that's why I don't do contracts. That's why I don't do marriage. That's why I don't like working for as an employee, because I'm always seeking to optimize and maximize my freedom um, from commitment, I guess, or from entanglements and from attachment. Now, so the reason that's important is because I also never felt that the US mainland had the interpersonal interaction, even though I'm a bit of a hermit myself and a bit of a recluse, and even though people tend to have an impression that I'm aloof and stuck up or what have you, the interpersonal interaction was always too cold and clinical for me in the States. And that could be as a result of cultural differences in how people interact. But with that said, I always found the interpersonal interaction, let's say the male female interaction in the States, to be somewhat combative. You started from a position of suspicion and hostility, and then had to break down walls in order to get through to someone in that regard. That's my experience. So when I travel to this part of the world, and whether it's Saipan or whether it's China, my favorite place to go, or Vietnam or Cambodia, one of the things I notice is how much easier the interpersonal interactions are. People aren't afraid to be friendly to each other. People aren't immediately suspicious. Girls, for example, are a little more outgoing, a little less suspicious of guys approaching them. So that to me is was a deal maker for me, how the interpersonal interaction. And I will say that the advantage that I have here is that on this side of the world, in China in particular, if you check on one of my channels, Jamaican in Asia, or you can download a book that I wrote, which is a blog of my 6 months in China called Jamaica. Guess who's coming to dim sum? Jamaican in China, and you'll see the interpersonal interaction. As a foreigner there, the my interaction is necessarily going to be different. So I'm the exotic foreigner in China, so it tends to attract attention, and people tend to be a little more friendly and outgoing, and will introduce themselves. So in general, one of the things I like about just life on this side of the world is that it's much easier for me for to engage in interaction if I choose to. So that's one. Weather is also a plus for me. I grew up and was born in a tropical climate, so for me, cold weather is a deal breaker. And the air is much cleaner here. We probably have the cleanest air in the United States, which isn't that difficult to do. But so the weather, the air, and primarily the people, to me, make it an ideal place. And the cost of living is actually much cheaper. So an apartment that might cost easily $1,200, $1,500 a month in Queens, where grew up, went to high school, could cost $300, $400 a month here. So I can live um, on my struggling author's income, struggling writer's income, without breaking the bank. So eat more easily than living stateside. So there's no sales tax here. There's no property tax. There's no parking meters. There, food I find to be cheap. I did a little short last week about what I spent at the Sabalo market, the farmers market. So overall, these are all of the benefits that I find living on Saipan, why I find it an ideal place, even as things slow down right now. Things are definitely a lot slower now than when I first moved here. But even with that, it's still a much better deal than living in New York, in Manhattan, where I lived before I moved here. So that's me, and that's the sort of response that our members get for their questions. All right, Maya, thanks for that. My husband wants to know if there are coconut crabs on the island. Yes. So part of Chamorro cuisine includes coconut crabs and fruit bats also. And both of those, I'm told, are endangered species and protected. So you cannot get those um, uh, on the open market. All right. So yeah, so they are protected, but coconut crabs do exist here. All right. Hope that's helpful. My opinion. Samuel asked my opinion on the best beach there, and is public line fishing allowed? Um, yes, line fishing is allowed. In fact, I just a couple of days ago I was at Banzai Cliff, which has close to a 400 foot, 200 to 400 foot drop. And I saw someone doing some line fishing off the cliff on at Banzai Cliff up north on the island. So public line fishing, yes, available. Sometimes in the mornings, you'll see guys all along the beach, along Beach Road, and sometimes at Sugar Dock, the beach at Sugar Dock, doing fishing as well, whether by net or with a pole and line. So, yep, fishing is definitely allowed here. And the best beach there, okay, so there are two types of beaches. One of the beaches are the well-kept, manicured beaches behind the hotels that are on beachfront. So hotels like Mariana's Beach Resort, um, Crown Plaza, all have beaches, right? Are all on the beach side and have beaches. They're well kept, very nice beaches. Most of the public, uh, the most of the residents won't go to those beaches. We'll leave those for the tourists. But the public beaches where you'll find lots of folks might be the beach at Susupi, not Susupi Beach, right by Sugar Dock. There, if you look on a map and look at find Sugar Dock, right, um, at the juncture of Susupi and Chalankanoa. The beach along there is really clean, really spectacular, and that to me would be the best one. And in the mornings, you'll find people fishing there, and in the afternoons, you'll find families hanging out there. So that's one of the best, in my opinion, from those I've seen. Okay. Um, can you write off part of your rent on income taxes? Yes, I can. So if you have a home-based business, so for example, I run my tour business from out of my home. And so, yes, when I'm completing my taxes, then on Form 8829 Business Use of Home, you can uh, estimate what percentage of your home is used for business and then deduct a commensurate percentage of your rent. So the rent in that case would be considered an indirect expense. It benefits the business indirectly. It's not a direct expense. So yes, you can deduct your rent and even certain maintenance of your home or apartment up to the percentage that is dedicated to a home-based business. So that's one way of doing it that I'm aware of. There might be others, but you could deduct your rent, a portion of your rent. Let's say you use 25% of your apartment for running your business, whether you're storing things there or whether that's where your home office is located. So 25% of your home is used for your business. So 25% of your rent could be deducted and listed as a business expense. So that's the short of it. So, yep, that's, and hope that answers that question. Rhythms in retrograde. All right. And coffee photography. That's interesting. Coffee photography says, is the water safer in Susupi than San Antonio? The water is not safer anywhere, my friend, meaning no one drinks the water here. And if you're new to the channel, that's something that you definitely want to keep in mind. If you visit Saipan or if you live here, most people are using bottled water. They may have a subscription to a company delivers it every so often, or they may, like me, go to a particular store with my two empties and refill it for $2.50. And so it's reverse osmosis water, filtered, purified water. So that's what most people are using here on Saipan. I don't, the water that comes out of the tap is a little brackish, I mean, salty, and tends to be a little corrosive also. So that's not what you want to. When I say corrosive, I just mean it's hard water, and over time it dulls your clothing and or causes buildup on your faucets. Um, but no, you don't want to choose tap water from either Susupi or Chalancanoa or San Antonio. You want to use bottled water. All right. You could use the tap water to wash your clothes or wash your dishes, but for um, or and for bathing, but for cooking and drinking, you want to use bottled water. Or there's some people who have their own catchment systems and are might be using rainwater as well. But for the most part, people are using bottled water. All right, keep that in mind. Thanks for that. Okay, so getting back to the issue of ChatGPT. So a fellow and ChatGPT making errors. So that's one of the things I notice is that the errors I find a lot of errors also when I use it sometimes to do website design. If I'm creating a little code snippet to perform a particular function on a website, I may notice that uh, coding is a little wrong. That's something that you wouldn't notice unless you're familiar with PHP or Perl or that sort of thing, but or JavaScript. But sometimes I'll catch an error there as well. But so in terms of relocating, someone emailed me and asked for my feedback on what ChatGPT suggested for their vacation to Saipan. And I noticed a few things that ChatGPT got wrong. And let's see, one of the things that was interesting though is that I made the I made the cut, and I was actually featured as a potential guide for this person's vacation. So that's because of my presence on the internet. But this individual asked ChatGPT what hotel they would recommend and for their trip if they're interested in World War II. Now, one of the things that was recommended that I disagreed with, and of course, you know, I really don't expect ChatGPT to know this. Or to be able to extrapolate what I'm about to say because it's simply scraping existing information, going by reviews and that sort of thing. But I'll just show you some of the um, potential risks of depending too entirely on ChatGPT. So the hotel that was recommended, I won't give the name, but the hotel that was recommended was far to the north of the island. Now, on a 12-mile by 5-mile island, you may not think that that's a consequential distance, but if you were to stay at that hotel up north with an interest in World War II, you would find yourself driving at least 6 miles, 7 miles into town to check out American Memorial Park, to see all the bunkers, to see the pillboxes and everything, and the tanks that are here primarily in the middle and the south of the island. There are some sites north, but usually I recommend to my guests that they stay in the middle of the island towards Garapan or even at maybe down to Chalancanoa so that they can be in close proximity to some of the sites that they're interested in visiting. So ChatGPT wouldn't know that, but also it's too far. This hotel that was recommended was too far from nightlife, too far, the little that we have, nightlife, from stores. There are not many other supporting stores in the area. So it may have high ratings, but for someone who is older, for someone who is interested in World War II, there might be better places to stay that won't require that you get a car to travel around or take an expensive taxi. So that was one thing. But then the other thing, as I mentioned, is that I got a great review from them, suggested guides for World War II site visits, Walt Goodridge, um, either through tours by locals or via tour or independently. And if you're interested in getting a tour, I'll just throw in here, you're better off contacting me directly for tours. If you're watching this video on YouTube, then there probably wouldn't be a reason why you would go through a middleman. But if you do, you'll end up paying more if you go through tours by locals and Viator. If you go through me directly, you'll save a tremendous amount on the cost. Award-winning local guide specializing in World War II pilgrimages. Yes, that's true. So ChatGPT got that right. Okay, and a few other things I'll just mention. For some reason, most any sort of scraping of public websites seems to keep referring to our ferry to Tinian. So in this itinerary that ChatGPT put together, they mentioned taking the ferry to Tinian. So it's typical that I'll always have to mention to someone who's contacting me that the ferry to Tinian uh, ended its service probably 2009, maybe 2010, shortly after the last garment factory closed in 2009. So there is no ferry from Saipan to Tinian unless you have your own boat, unless you charter a private boat owner. There is no public transportation by boat to Tinian. So any reference that you see anywhere for a ferry on Saipan is outdated information. And the itinerary also mentions taking an evening flight out to Guam. Those of us who live here know there are no evening flights, to the best of my knowledge, to Guam, only a morning, once a day morning flight to Guam. I think uh, there's a earlier one, 6 a.m. on certain days, and then the regular 9:50 a.m. flight out of Guam. So just certain little things and others that I won't get into. But in terms of the accuracy, one of the things that always keep in mind is that ChatGPT is searching for information by scraping the web and looking at um, TripAdvisor or other sites, Wikipedia, and many of those sites are not updated regularly. And many of those sites also have completely incorrect information because I've seen sites in which they mention Guam tour sites as being here on Saipan. So that's why, as I mentioned to a friend of mine, my my role here is still safe. ChatGPT won't encroach on the role of information that I provide to people because my information tends to be a bit more accurate, a bit more up to date as it is. All right. So with that, let's see what else you guys have. So we talked about the touchback. We talked about what ChatGPT gets wrong. And okay, that was about it. We did start a little late, but we're now caught up. Let me just check if anyone has any more questions. Um, I'll wrap up in a few minutes, but want to thank everyone for participating and for sticking it out during the power outage. And just a few things in terms of admin. Yes, the new book, I'm putting the finishing touches on it. The new book, the Saipan 2026 Saipan Living Relocation Guide, is going to be ready, hopefully on time. I have 4 or 5 days left to do a ton of work to meet the deadline, but that'll be available. You can check out saipanliving.com and you'll see all of the great stuff that I plan to include or that I am including. And anyone who has purchased the 2022 edition, the one with the sunset on the cover, let me know. And when the 2026 is ready, I'll send you free of charge the 2026. So if you bought the 2022 anytime in the last year and a half, 2 years, let me know. If you bought it on Amazon, then please find a receipt and let me know. Or if you don't have a receipt, then I'm going to give you a quiz to ask you what word appears on page 23, paragraph 2, line 7. And if you can tell me what word that is, then I'll believe that you have the book and I'll give you the updated version. Okay, so we're going to just wrap up with the last question here. Slayer 67 Yeah, for rotating, okay, those are comments. Let's see. Okay, Slayer has some gripes with the island. Uh, 10 pieces per season. Oh, okay. So according to a former Rota resident, let's see, Slayer, who said he moved from Oregon flew from Rota to Oregon, said that there's a lot of coconut crabs in Rota and it is seasonal, 10 pieces per person. So apparently, and this is just Slayer's word, I haven't gotten this corroborated, but he says that you can get coconut crabs on Rota, 10 pieces a person. So keep in mind, maybe Slayer has a personal connection. Maybe he has a source that the rest of us may not. But according to Slayer, that there seems to be a limitation, restriction. You can get it, but there might be a limit of 10 pieces per person. So we'll see how that bears out. Thanks, Slayer, for adding that. Again, that's Slayer's account. That's not mine. I'm not sure. No offense, Slayer. I don't know how accurate others may find it. I'll just tell you a story. It reminds me of I can say that life is a certain way in China. I can say that people treat you a certain way in Cambodia. I can say that the girls are friendlier in Singapore. But that is just my experience based on who I am, what I look like, how I present myself, who I know. So I'm sometimes reluctant to say that what I experience is a global or general experience because I know for a fact that the another person who is not Walt Goodridge may walk into a situation and get a totally different reception and response. So I say that to say this, that Slayer may be speaking as someone who lived on Rota, who has friends and connections through whom he can get 10 pieces. But if you and I went there, maybe we may not get the same, the same treatment. But cool. Thanks, Slayer. Okay, good. So with that said, I want to thank you guys for participating. If anyone wants to be generous and follow Maya Cashmore and become a member, or you drop a super chat into the chat, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, check out saipanliving.com for the relocation guide. Check out also discoversaipan.com, and I'm launching a new version of that website. So in about 2 days, so it'll be much tighter, much nicer looking, and let's see what else I can tell you. And keep your dreams um, alive because even with a slow economy and even with some of the gripes that Slayer has for the island, it's still a better deal for a lot of us who didn't grow up here. For those of us who are living in the States, I've run into people who are moving from the States who are coming here and still are very glad that they made the move here to Saipan. It's still a better deal than what they left, whether it's the weather, whether it's the people, whether it's the expenses. So for many of us, as even a slow Saipan is still a superior Saipan. So with that said, thank you guys for participating, and I will see you in the next video.